Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Big Three, the podcast where we unpack the biggest stories and insights shaping influencer marketing and the creator economy. I'm your host, Ceci. Joining me today is Christian Liquigan, who leads brand partnerships at Spotter. We invited Christian because he has spent years working closely with both creators and brands on long-term partnerships. So we thought he'd be a great person to help us unpack how brand partnerships are evolving. Christian, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here. How's everything going?
Hi, it's going well. It's going well. Thank you for having me, Ceci, and appreciate. I'm looking forward to this conversation, whatever like brand partnerships and
Yeah.
things of that sort. But I extremely excited to talk to you again.
Absolutely. It's been what, a year and a half, a year since we last
Yes,
connected?
I mean it feels like 10 years, but it's probably been about a year and a half since we probably last spoke. I know
Yeah.
I've had a few opportunities to contribute to net influencers, so I appreciate this speaking opportunity as well.
Abs- Absolutely. Well, let's kick things off with an introduction. Christian,
Okay,
tell us a bit about yourself,
sure.
about your role at Spotter, and what you're focused on this day.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in the digital advertising ecosystem for about 15 years. Within the last 7 or 8 has been primarily focused on social, and within the last 5 years has been around creators specifically. I was at the beginning of the pandemic. I was at TikTok as one of the first sellers over there. After that, I was at Captivate, which was recently acquired by Publicis about a year or so ago. And then I was at a startup called Stargazer and joined Spotter about a couple months ago. So
Yeah.
it's been a great evolution in my career, but also as well as, as a creators have really evolved over the last, 10 or so years as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for that intro, Christian. Tell us a bit about you just shared with us your journey in the industry. Tell us about what has that experience across different silos of the industry taught you about how creative partnerships actually work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for a long time we've been trying to fit creators into a system that was, I think, traditionally built for media. So you think of like
Yeah.
campaign, sliding, one-off attribution, but we all know that creators really don't operate like traditional media. They operate more like media businesses, if anything. And so if
Okay.
you're looking at creators today, they're not necessarily looking at like posts individually. They're thinking of programming, and now they have these teams, production schedules, recurring formats,
Oh,
and things of that sort. So when you really zoom out, this isn't really about like influencer marketing anymore per se. It's really about the evolution of like what media has looked like over the last, 5 to 10
very
years.
true. Yeah. Yeah. Chris, before we go deeper in today's conversation, for listeners who may not be familiar with Spotter yet, how do you usually describe, what the company does and the role it plays within the creator ecosystem?
But yeah, absolutely. Spotter really sits at this unique intersection between capital, data, and media. So we're not a talent agency. We're not an influencer marketing agency by any means as well. I think on one side, we're really helping creators scale into true media businesses. So we're giving them upfront capital so they can invest in higher quality, more consistent production and programming. On the other
Okay.
side, we're really helping brands access those ecosystems in a way that's repeatable and scalable. Because of what we're seeing now is really the rise of what we call creator TV, where creators are building episodic, always on content engines that really function like a modern day network. So it's 22 minutes and an episode length. It's consistent and predictable programming cadence and things of that sort. And so when you look at something like YouTube, which is a $40 billion ad platform now, it's really largely driven by creators. And so that's
Yeah.
when we really start to realize that this isn't just influencer marketing anymore. It really is this like creator TV side of the business.
Yeah. Well, I think that conversation connects directly with, today's topic, creator partnerships and how they are evolving right
Yeah.
now. So let me ask you this, Chris. When you look at the creator economy today, what feels fundamentally different about how brands are working with creators compared to
Mhm.
even a few years ago? or even compared to last year? Because I think it's there's a lot that has changed in the last year too.
Absolutely. I think generally speaking, we're going from what we used to call influencers 10 or so years ago to
Yeah.
now it's more so creators and I think campaigns have really swapped to more of like a programming side of the business. So on the brand side, it used to be one brief, one post, one moment, but on the creator side, there is this like always on programming. And so you're no longer just buying a moment anymore. You're really becoming part of a content ecosystem that's
Yeah.
already in motion. And so typically you're partnering with creators for the audiences, but it's really evolved into tapping into their platform, which is creating content and distribution and the ability to really capture attention as well. And so we're going from like moving from this like renting attention for a moment to investing in attention over time.
Well, I know I have a few questions about what it looks like when, that movement from one-off campaigns to always on creator partnerships. But before we go there, if you had to summarize the shift in one sentence, what's the biggest change happening right now in how brands think about creator partnerships?
Oh, that's a great question because I think you can kind of go in a few different directions with it. I think that attention isn't fragmented, it's distributed, and creators are really that kind of connective tissue across all of these platforms. Consumers are now using 6 to 7 different platforms per month on average. And a lot of that is because the creators are following, our audiences are following these creators as opposed to really following these platforms.
Okay. Let's go back to what you were just mentioning a minute ago, moving beyond one-off creator deals. As you said before, for a long time, creator marketing was built around those individual posts or short term campaigns. What actually changes once brands, start thinking about creator partnership at scale?
Yeah, I think what happens is that it's like creator marketing partnerships really stops being like a marketing tactic and starts becoming like part of a larger like media strategy. I think brands will typically spend more money restarting creator partnerships or relationships than they do like on underperforming media. And
Yeah.
so I think that shift goes from like campaign calendars to content calendars and there's creative changes and there's measurement changes. So I think when you start looking at, as a silo and as opposed to looking at it as part of a larger strategy, I think that's when really you start to see that success happen from a creator perspective.
Okay. Chris, and let me ask you this. Do you think every brand is ready to make that shift happen? I mean, in terms of building something more structured and ongoing?
Great question. Think it
They
depends.
should be.
Yeah, I think it depends on the the risk tolerance, but also the
Right.
appetite to dive into kind of creative marketing. And so I think that inflection point really happens when brands realize that their best performing work isn't coming from like new creators, it's also coming from like the same ones just over and over again. So I think it's a tough question to answer because I think for a lot of brands, yes, but also a lot of brands, they're still dipping their toes into the water. They're still trying to understand how to best lean into kind of these creative
Yeah.
strategies.
Yeah. Chris, let me put this in perspective or bring it to practice. Let's
Yep.
say I'm a brand that I've done the shift going for from one-offs to something again more structured, ongoing. And now I want to scale that. I've been working with, let's say, 10, 20 influencers, and I want to scale that program. Where do creative programs actually start to break once I make that shift towards scale?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of it is like operational inefficiencies and like lack of like standardization. So, in that process, there might be too many approvals. Maybe the brand or the agency wants a lot of creative control. So you really do need systems, frameworks, and these repeatable processes in place to ensure that you're able to run these creative campaigns at scale. Because yes, it's easy to run, one campaign for with one creator, but what happens when you're running 10 campaigns with 50 creators. So you really need those processes and frameworks in place to make sure that you're scaling most effectively.
Okay. I'm curious about the conversations you're having with brands, Chris. I assume you have um, a lot of those conversations every single day. What are their main concerns or challenges or pain points or even doubts when it comes to
Yeah.
scale?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things when it comes to creators that they might be skeptical about, whether it be, is it the right tone of voice or the right from a creative perspective, are they really translating to what they want the brand to be as well? And so I think there's like this like concern about how much creative control they want to give the creators, but also, what is the ROI when working with creators? Is it a top funnel, campaign, and how do you kind of drive users down that funnel? So I think there's that like measurement aspect of it. So it can kind of go into multiple directions, but I would say that the two biggest things about like concerns that brands typically have is giving that creative control to creators and not being like overly scripted or like overly produced in a
Yeah.
certain sense, but also at the same time is like measurement and how do I effectively measure if this creator campaign perform to whatever the KPI of the campaign is.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Chris, because we talked about what happens when brands make the shift from, again, one off to something more ongoing, when they try to scale those programs. What happens if a brand keeps approaching creator partnerships the same way they approach influencer campaigns 5 years ago? What's most likely to break first, or what's most likely that that brand is missing or losing?
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of like look at creators like long-term partners as opposed to one-off vendors. They should be an extension of the creative agency and the creative teams. I always say that brands and agency partners should look at creators as their own in-house creative directors and leverage them to the best of their ability to provide guidance on how would they tap in best into their audiences and things of that sort. I think it's also important to kind of integrate into the creator's existing content instead of trying to force something new. That's one of the big challenges I think a lot of brands have till this day is that they want the brand to be at the forefront of the creator's content, but you also want to leverage the creators and their authentic storytelling as to
Yeah.
how to bring those brands into their
Okay. We talked about the challenges, the concerns. Let's talk about the solutions.
yeah.
When you look at programs that actually scale well, what do they tend to do differently?
Yeah, I think to like my previous point, like there is this understanding that they are partners in this, and there's a trust that is built between the creators and the brand, which really, I think, just fundamentally changes the dynamic. I think in that point, create or the brand is more willing to take more creative risks. They are willing to integrate more naturally, and they think about the
Yeah.
audience's response and not just kind of the deliverables of the campaign, as well.
Yeah. And behind the scenes, Chris, what does it actually take, both structurally or operationally, for a brand to build a creator partnership strategy that it can actually scale
Yeah.
and be sustainable?
It takes a village. I would say infrastructure is the most important part to your point about like structure and operationally. So you need standardized contracts, whether it be MSAs or different addendums and things of that sort. You need faster approval workflows. You need better data visibility and measurement frameworks as well. And so all these things kind of have to come together at different points of at the execution cycle of the actual
Yeah,
campaign. But I think you really do need all those things work together cohesively in order to ensure that you're running a very successful, creator campaign.
absolutely. Chris, and going back to the conversation we were having, I asked you, what was the question? I asked you about what conversations are you having with brands. Is there any conversation that you're not having with them that you wish, something
Um,
you wish they would ask for more?
yeah, I think one of the things that, when I'm looking at working with brands and agency partners as well, I think one of the things I'd love to have deeper discussions is like how do you essentially have a like I would say like a creator council almost, where you have like an in-house council of like different creators, almost advisors, I guess, or
Yeah.
ambassadors that you would say. And I think that goes in part of, leveraging creators on a one-off or maybe they're working with creators 2 or 3 times, but how do you work with creators that share the same brand voice as a brand and start building and creating content from a creative perspective at scale? Because one of the most common themes that we hear from brands is that creating, brand specific assets on social media just takes a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of money as well.
Yeah.
But you can leverage working with creators to kind of create that content for them. So I'd love to have more conversations about how do you bring creators in-house more and how do you start leveraging them more as yeah, like a council or ambassadors or things of that
Okay.
sort.
Okay. Chris, when you look ahead and think about the way that creative partnership will continue to, evolve, is
Mhm.
there any specific changes that you expect to see in the way they work together?
Absolutely. I think creators are going to look very much more like networks. So it's episodic content, they're
Okay.
franchises, it's predictable programming. I think content becomes more episodic and franchise driven. I think brands will be more invested into like recurring formats. And so not just like a single video, but a series, a segment, or even like full content vertical that like audiences kind of come back to.
Yeah,
And then the second thing is I think, fewer creators and deeper integrations. So I think the model won't just be, how do I work with 100 to 200 creators, at scale? It's how do I work with maybe 10 to 20 different creators, but more consistent?
absolutely. Let me ask you this. What excites you the most about what the industry is going?
Oh, man.
I know it's a broad question, but
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
I think the industry is definitely adopting at a quicker pace than it was a couple of years ago. I think the industry sees the value in creators and things of that sort. I'm interested to see kind of what we're seeing now with creator TV, but also the bridge of like creators in social media, but also creators now signing distribution deals with Netflix and with Tubi and things of that sort. So you're bringing the creators that have traditionally been more social focused, but now they're actually building episodic content and they have their own shows on Netflix and in Tubi and all these other places as well. So I'm really excited to kind of see that transition from like, oh, I'm just, I'm a creator or I'm an influencer, but I'm actually building like this media enterprise and I'm showing up on some of these large, platforms or networks or whatever it may be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Chris, last question for you.
Yeah.
If you were, and to sort of start wrapping things up, if you were sitting in a CMO seat today and wanted to build, meaningful creative partnerships over the next couple of years, what would be the first thing you would change in how your organization approaches creators?
Yeah. I think there's a few different things that I would do. I think the first thing is organizational, not tactical. And so right now, a lot of brands have creators or like influencer budgets sitting in different teams. It's social, it's PR, it's experiential. It acts more as a test than it does like a core channel. So I would elevate kind of the creator partnerships into that same level of importance as like paid media or TV. And then the few other things that I would do as well is I'd probably move from campaign based buying to like partnership based buying, the same way that you do upfronts or new fronts or like JBPs and things of that sort. Is instead of asking, what do we need for this campaign, you're asking who are the 5 to 10 creators we want to build with over the next 12 to
I
24
like
months,
that.
or whatever it is. I think there's a few different things that I would think about, as opposed to, like, not just tactical, but, like, deeper integrations with creators. Maybe you're even aligning incentives with outcomes, and maybe there's these longer term deals where it's performance based and things of that sort as well. So I think there's different creative ways to kind of bring in creators more into the brand as well that I don't
Yeah,
think is happening at the moment. But I'm excited that a lot of the brands are actually looking at creators that way within the next, year.
absolutely. Well, thanks for that for that response. I really liked it. Chris, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience?
I think as being part of the creator economy over the last few years, I really think that it the future of like creator economy isn't like brands using creators, it's actually building with the creators. And I think that's
Yeah.
really where you start to see the difference between brands that are, kind of new to the creator strategy versus brands that are really ingrained into creators is like, how do you build with these creators as opposed to kind of just working with them on a one off? So, no, this is great. I appreciate you including me in this conversation and helping answer some of these questions around where we see kind of the creator economy going from here.
Our pleasure. It was a great conversation. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and sharing your insights, your perspective with us. And to everyone listening, thanks as always for tuning in into the Big Three. We'll be back soon with more conversations and insights from across the creator economy. Bye, Christian. Everybody, talk soon.
Thank you so much.